Today, we'll be discussing the amazing career of music icon and visionary Quincy Jones, who is celebrating 90 years young.
Join us today for celebrating The Dude, a tribute to Quincy Jones Part 1, with our guests Siedah Garrett and Keith Clinkscales.
Now, we're doing things a little different this show, and we're going to be talking to people who have known him and worked with him throughout the decades. I'm Monique Kelly, and this is Music Day, a verified hit. This is a show all about discussing the trends and issues around the Black music business, unapologetic conversations that we hope will build education and insight around all things dealing with this topic. You can catch Music Day on Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon Music, and all the places where you listen to your podcast. So today we have Keith Clinkscales as well as Siedah Garrett. Welcome to the show, you all. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Keith, I'm going to start with you. You came from sports at ESPN and then to Vibe magazine. Starting a new magazine is a daunting task under any circumstances, but Vibe magazine was in the music industry almost immediately as a force to be reckoned with. How did the magazine find its voice so quickly, and what was the vision of Quincy Jones at the start?
I started coming out of business school running my own magazine called Urban Profile. I didn't start with sports. I got an opportunity to meet Quincy early on in a discussion that Time Inc. was having, and Time Inc. was getting with Time Warner Media, for example, to go ahead and create Time Warner. And Quincy was a force. He was something that, a celebrity, yes, but a talent that was just huge. So Time Inc. was the world's best publisher of magazines, and Quincy had very strong ideas about how Rolling Stone was back in the days as he was coming up in music and not covering enough of artists of color. And with that, he used that along with the kind of musical styles he has worked with as the foundation to what we call Vibe. And not only was he involved, but he also made sure he attracted very high-level journalists, and they went on from there. And then to add to it, added fashion, added style, added the beginnings of television, added the beginnings of entertainment, and we were able to do everything. And then you knew of people like artists like Siedah, artists like Michael Jackson, different things that had happened in the world. We are the world. There's so many things. The color purple. There were so many things that touched and had gone through Quincy. And most important, I think the thing that I got from him the most, I was relatively young when I started with him, 28, maybe 29, to start in that high position. But he always conferred a significant amount of respect. I was never some junior that was coming to do this. He dealt with us from the beginning, firm but with respect and making sure we did the right thing.
And how did Quincy tap you to launch Vibe magazine as CEO in 1993? What was that conversation like?
I think one of the things that Quincy did was he made sure that the people at Time hired people of color. There was a young woman of color named Lynn McDaniel who was in the human resource side of Time, and she did the work of identifying people of color to work on this publication. And more importantly, took me through the whole process at Time Inc. Did not get to meet Quincy until after I had gone through the proper approval through the people at Time, because they were also making magazines too. Ironically, one of the magazines that they had just made, either just after or just before Vibe, was Martha Stewart Living. So when it came to time, to dealing with high level creatives and people that are extremely demanding, Time was quite experienced in this.
And do you feel like with his vision, was it based on his musical career? And like when you were talking about the overall vision for the magazine, what was it based on? And do you feel like it was accomplished?
I think it was based on Quincy as an entity. Quincy was a strong, very strong music entity, and music was his foundation. But from that foundation, he did an exceptional job with film. He did a job with television. He did a job with music videos. He worked with newer forms of technology all the time. He was constantly, well before the internet, constantly talking about different types of recording technologies and different things he would take you through. And he was on it when it came to, making beats and making music. His energy was technology, highly technical from the beginning. And, I started with Quincy in the early 90s, and then he developed Qwest Records and right at the same time or whatever. And then to be able to go ahead and have all the things he had done provided us a foundation across the spectrum of entertainment.
His Back on the Block album was released back in 1989 and bridged generations of rappers, jazz legends, R&B legends. Do you think that project also contributed to his idea for Vibe?
I think everything he did contributed in the sense that not just the artist, but he thought about things in culture. He kind of thought in color, and he was an extremely giving man. Barely, if any, never heard anything racially separating from him. You learned about Robert De Niro, and you learned about Snoop Dogg in the same types of discussions. You know what I mean? It was never, he did a good job of taking you through jazz, through classical music, through the way Broadway plays are done. What you found out more is the importance of music working together, and finding different ways to build a foundation for entertainment. And it would be an understatement. If it wasn't for Quincy, there would be no Vibe. Quincy was the only one that could lead something with that type of energy, only one, period.
Agreed. And speaking of bridging music together, it brings me to our next guest, Siedah Garrett. You're best known for writing Man in the Mirror and Michael Jackson. Co-writing Man in the Mirror for Michael Jackson and Tomorrow for Tevin Campbell. And you've written for so many artists and won Grammys, especially your classic duet with Dennis Edwards, Don't Look Any Further, and been nominated for Oscars, and as well as my favorite song too, I Just Can't Stop Loving You. I love that song. You were one of the first artists signed to Qwest. You're a phenomenal songwriter, and you were discovered by Quincy Jones. Exactly how did your discovery come about?
Well, thank you for inviting me to your program first. I was introduced to Quincy Jones through a cattle call. There was an article in Music Connection magazine where Quincy said he was looking for a mixed vocal group like the Fifth Dimension or Take Six, which hadn't been discovered yet. But he settled on three guys and me. It was after many, many months of letters saying, congratulations, you're still in the running. It went from 500 to 250 to 100 to 50 to 20 to 10 to 4. And it was me and three other guys, and we became this group called Deco. And we did one record, and it was the soundtrack from Sidney Poitier's directorial debut, a film called Fast Forward. And it was literally out for about 20 minutes. But in that song, on that soundtrack was a song produced by Jelly Bean Benitez. And that went on to become a #1 dance record and a classic club record. And it was because of that I was signed to Quincy Jones as an artist and a songwriter. Now, I hadn't written but a couple of poems. I had no experience in songwriting, so I didn't want to sign a contract with Quincy Jones committing me to, let's say, 12 songs a year. As a non-songwriter, that kind of frightened me. So I said, no, I don't want that. I just want the artist deal. So Quincy had a meeting and with the guys. I don't know, for some reason I wasn't at this meeting, and they had their contracts on his desk, and he was like rifling through the papers going, where's Siedah's contract? They're like, oh, she didn't want to sign the publishing deal. She just wants the artist contract. And Quincy literally said, you either all sign or nobody signs. Next thing I know, Siedah, bitch, you better sign this contract. So I signed the contract, and I began the job of learning how to craft a song, because I did not want to be on the business end of a lawsuit with Quincy Jones for me not fulfilling my contractual obligations. So I just started writing songs, and at the 2.5-year point in a 5-year deal, Quincy was in the middle of what we now know as the Bad album. And he had one more song to put on this record. So he called a meeting of his songwriters. I think his West Coast songwriters. I think there was like 6 or 8 of us. Walked into his house. I was late. So he's talking, and I watch him track me with his eyes across the room. And it's like, as I was saying before, I was so rudely interrupted. And I just tried to sneak into the corner and, be real quiet and just, So I took a few copious notes, and then I took it back to my favorite songwriter whose demos I sang religiously, happily, soulfully, Mr. Glenn Ballard. So I went to him and I said, Quincy's looking for another song for this record. He said, well, what does he want? I'm like, I don't know. He said, I want a hit. So Glenn gets up from his seat. He goes over to his keyboard. And while he's doing that, I'm rifling through my lyric book. Cut to 2 years before this point, I was at a songwriting session with master jazz keyboardist John Beasley. And we're writing a song, and his phone rings. And instead of him letting the answer machine pick up the phone, he picks up and begins this very banal conversation. Oh, I'm not doing nothing. And I'm rifling through my book, like seething, saying, no, I did not hear him just say he's not doing nothing. I'm flipping through my book. And then I hear him say, the man? What man? Oh, the man in the mirror. Wrote down Man in the Mirror. 2 years later, I'm at Glenn's house. He gets up, turns on the keyboard. He starts playing. Just to get a sound on the keyboard. And I'm flipping through my book. And the phrase, Man in the Mirror, virtually popped off the page. And I couldn't write it fast enough. I was like, wait, hold up. I'm writing. In like 10, 12 minutes, we had the first verse and the first chorus of Man in the Mirror. It was Wednesday. Glenn said, you go home, finish the lyric. I'll finish the track. On Friday, we'll demo the song. Did that. Finished like 7:30, 8 o'clock at night on Friday. I knew the Qwest publishing offices were closed, but I really wanted Quincy to get this song before the weekend was out. So I never called him before. Mr. Jones, Glenn and I wrote this great song. He said, great. Turn it into the publishing office. I'll hear it on Monday or Tuesday. I said, can I just come and drop off the cassette? He said, no, I said, I have 12 suits in my dining room. I can't. Just drop it off. Quincy, come on. Now, Quincy has 6 daughters. So at this point, he knew this conversation was futile. So I ended up taking the cassette over to his house, dropped off the cassette. He said, fine, I'll get back to you. Quincy, just call me as soon as you can. I just want to know. He said, all right. 2.5 hours, 3 hours later, I'm at my house cooking dinner, get a call from Quincy Jones. Sid, this is the best song I've heard in 10 years. And I'm like, then he said, but I didn't hear shit after best song 10 years. It was just like, so then I hear him say something about, I'm gonna play it for Michael, but I'm not sure if he's gonna like it, but don't worry, Sid. If I don't do it with Michael on his record, I'll do it with James Ingram on my record. And I'm like, James Ingram, Michael Jackson, James Ingram, I had to let it go. Had to let that go. And then 3 days later, I get a call from Quincy and he says, and I quote, we in the studio recording your old piece of song. And I'm like, he said, but Michael, it's too short. Michael wants you to extend the chorus. And then I hear something in the background. Quincy goes, hold on. And I hear, and Quincy goes, Sid, Michael really wants you to, hold up. And then I hear, and Quincy said, but Michael, really, hold on a minute, Sid. Now, Quincy Jones puts Michael Jackson on the phone. And I don't know about you, Monique, but when I was coming up, Michael was my husband, okay? My cousin had Jermaine, my other cousin had Tito, but Michael was my husband. So in my little mind, I'm on the phone with my husband, right? But I did not want to be fangirl. Oh my God, Michael, I love you so much. Your music meant so much to me growing up. All that is true. But baby, I was strictly hotel operator. How can I help you? First thing Michael said to me was, I love this song. I'm like, thanks. Second thing Michael Jackson, my husband, said to me, and I love your voice. Thank you. Then he started talking about what he wanted in the song and how, and I don't know what happened in my little brain where I said, you know what? Let's not trouble Michael for any lyrics to this song. Let's just write 6 stanzas and let him pick from those. So I did that. And he chose, you got to get it right while you got the time, because when you close your heart, then you close your mind. That was the second half of the chorus that did not exist on the demo. So we did that. And then Quincy called and said, you know, this key is a little bit too high for Michael. Can you come in and sing it in a lower key? I'm like, sure. So I go to the studio. I walk in. It's Bruce Swedien, Quincy Jones, and my husband. So I said, he introduced himself, and Quincy introduced us, and I greeted him, and then we had a little chat and about the song, and then Quincy said, okay, go on the studio and sing the demo in the new key. So I stand up and I start to walk into the recording studio. And Michael has the biggest video camera. It was like a boombox on his shoulder. And he's walking behind me into the studio. And I'm like, what are you doing? He said, I really want to record you sing this demo. And I'm like, why? And then he said, because I want to sing it like you. I said, great, Mike. All my friends are going to believe me when I tell them he wants to sing it like me. So I go in the studio. I had never told that story before the Spike Lee documentary came out, where you can actually see me walking into the studio, Michael behind me with his video camera. The whole wall of the studio was mirrors. So it was me with the man in the mirror behind me, watching the man in the mirror while I go sing the demo Man in the Mirror. It was insane.
I love that. I love that. And let me ask you, since the two of you are here together, Quincy had music, TV, film, magazines, tours, all going on at the same time. Was there any synergy between the two of you? Did you two ever work together, you and Keith? Or Keith, you and Siedah, have you two worked together before?
Well, we covered different things that she did, but not work with her per se. The important thing was listen to how Quincy talked about his artist, and James Ingram, everybody everybody that he has dealt with, he spoke about in such a way that you really got that, and then that we tried to bring as much of that energy and description to the publication.
And Siedah, you have an interesting experience because you were signed as an artist to Qwest, and you were also a songwriter. What was your experience as being a signed artist versus being a songwriter?
It was tough. It was two completely different worlds, two completely different deals, two completely different sets of people that I was meant to deal with. After the first year, the other three guys were let go of their deal because they cashed checks instead of wrote songs. So my deal was extended, but the artist deal was kaput, but the songwriting deal was still in full effect. Mm-hmm. So I just started writing songs. I don't know. I got with my favorite, the people that I love singing demos for, and I would just ask them, would you write a song with me? Like, it was just learning learning my craft, and then integrating that craft with my assignments.
Keith, I've been following your career for years, Keith. It's just next level exceptional. As an executive, as an innovator, you're just next level. And we've been talking a lot about the intersection of music and tech lately. And about 30 years ago, you launched Vibe.com. Was Quincy an early adopter in tech?
Oh, yes. I mean, I think he was mainly an early adopter through some of the early innovations in the studios. Different things were occurring in the studios. Different things were occurring with sound. There was the ability, even way back then, to record sound across. If you were in a studio in London, you could record to a studio in Los Angeles. This type of discussion was done. You're dealing with the highest technology available for that type of reproduction. What was not around was the ways that records are recorded. Records still were, there were still 33s, 45s, 78s, and there were cassettes. Yes, a lot of cassettes, but they were not when people would go to the stores. They were still getting records per se, and the way you got radio was different, and the power of celebrity, real celebrity, was important. And the thing about Quincy was at another level of class that we might not ever see. That was the thing that he had the ability to play in multiple genres, and that created a way for him to lead all different types of things, and not just in music, but to extend the power of the music to do other things. And then also, it's very easy for us to kind of miss it right now here in 2023. Michael Jackson was a force. Siedah could tell you all that. Michael Jackson was something different. So the fact that Quincy was the person that would go ahead and arrange that and deal with that level of intellect, power, creativity was something else. So the beauty of the whole thing was Quincy getting involved the way he involved with media helped the world see the role that people of color truly have, going all the way back to the turn of the century, going all the way down. I mean, Quincy taught me in a studio about the downbeat and how you pay attention to I mean, there was just too many things about music that man made sure he talked with you about without ever, and I do mean ever, making you feel like you did not belong there, you know? And I've worked with some of the best producers, and I've been in the studios for some of the best producers going, but, you know, Quincy has a very special knack, and I not only loved him for it, the entire industry misses it now. The entire industry misses it now.
Yeah. And do you think your time at Vibe led to Diddy tapping you to be the CEO of Revolt?
I think my time at Vibe gave me a relationship with him, and also the time I spent at ESPN, where I ran a cable operation, and I had done some things at a higher level there, very much combined with the work at Vibe, because you know, Bad Boy and that whole label started right around 1992, right when Vibe started, 92, 93. You know, so that was from 93 to 2000. That was hip hop, the foundation of Puff, Jay, a dash of 50 Cent. So you had a number of things going on. This was it. But but honestly, Monique, the whole time, Quincy was involved. You know, yeah. I mean, Quincy was involved. I mean, from Tupac to, you know, from with his family with Tupac. I mean, there were always things with this man. You know, and it was we were never like with the way I was with my father. You know, not talking about hip hop, but not like that with Quincy. You know, not like that with Quincy.
Yeah, he's like forever young.
And you know,
seriously.
The other thing too, the people I met, you know, with Quincy, I met Bill Clinton, I met Oprah Winfrey, I met Clarence Avant for the first time. You know, when you really, I mean, many more, but they were in Q's house, and and with that type of thing, you got to have a different discussion.
I love that. And Keith, please tell us about the tech company you run now.
Well, what I'm doing now is I'm raising money. I still work on a sports website called the Shadow League, and doing work raising money. I'm working at several documentary productions I had wanted to do, and you know, most honestly, I got to learn a lot from my experience at both Revolt and at ESPN about making things, you know. And one of the things I got to do very early on at ESPN was make a film about the late great Kobe Bryant with Spike Lee, you know. And you know, so that was a tremendous learning experience. So I think if there was a theme to my life and my career from Quincy, was one that was constantly learning. You know, you spent a lot of time learning if you were willing to do so, because you know, it never was a lot of egos for someone who could have all of it, you know?
Right. And Siedah, you have toured with Quincy, James Ingram, Patty Austin multiple times. I need to know, what was being on the road like?
It was a constant party with Quincy, because he had what he calls hanging chops. I think we were in somewhere in Asia, maybe Singapore. And we had this show that we'd done. And afterwards, we all went to this club. And we're hanging out, special VIP section, Quincy in this club. And the club closed at 2 a.m. But Quincy was still holding court. And the people that worked at the club wanted to go home, but Quincy was still holding court. So they brought out the vacuum. They turned on the lights. They brought out the vacuum, and they were trying to vacuum around Quincy. He lifted up his feet so they could vacuum under his feet while he continued to hold court. That was like, he was like the master of just hanging. He is the master of the hang. So with Quincy, the night never ended. You would have to end it before he would end it.
Oh, wow.
So he's known for his hanging chops. He said he developed that hanging out with Miles Davis and Dizzy Gillespie and, you know, all those people. They had hanging chops. So that's where Quincy learned to hang to all hours of the night. He was so much fun on the road, and everybody wanted to be around him and talk to him and be with him. So he was the light, and we were all little moths just trying to get a piece of that flame. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, for sure. Keith, do you have any fun stories like that about Quincy working with him on the magazine?
I think the funnest thing that happened with me was when we went over, you know, well, there's a number of different times that Quincy always had a story. It really didn't matter. It really did not matter the individual, you know, from Bill Clinton, when we did the Vibe show, we learned a lot about making the show, talking to me about Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. when they were traveling around in Las Vegas and they wouldn't let Sammy into certain restaurants. How Frank was like, well, let me tell you what we're not going to do, and we're not going to play here. I mean, so Quincy was highly aware of race and privilege, but at the same time, never, and I mean never, used that as an obstacle or a crutch. He continued to build on things, but he made sure the people who worked with him were aware, you know, both black, white, and on down the line, and across different sexes and across people's sexual orientations. Quincy, the entire time, was just somebody that knew how to deal with everything. So that and dealt with in the kind of way where you felt welcome. And I think that worked with us when we were working with some very high level celebrities, you know, because of the deference that people would have for him. And that happened because of what he extended. My time from with Whitney and Oprah, you know, Oprah very early on, you know, Oprah was, this is when, and Oprah's still Oprah, don't get me wrong, but this was Oprah. And, you know, he made sure all the times we handled things in a certain way, and we dealt things in a certain way, and you got an excellent education from that. And if you're going to be in the industry, he never was kowtowing or never just smiling to smile. At the same time, he was always a very smart and insightful, but he was paid a great deal of attention to the creativity, to the tenor of their voice, to the subtleties, you know, that make things work. Just like that story that Siedah mentioned earlier. That's a subtlety. That's a Quincy subtlety right there, you know, and you stick with that.
So, Siedah, you have done some great duets through Quincy Jones and paired up with some other legends like yourself. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Quincy was a master at putting people together that normally would not be in the same room, let alone on the same album project. It was through him that I not only did a duet with Michael Jackson, I Just Can't Stop Loving You, but also Barry White, James Ingram, Albie Shore, El DeBarge. I was singing with all these amazing artists. And Quincy Jones gave me away at my wedding.
Oh,
he is everything to me. When we worked on the Back on the Block album, I worked with Chaka Khan and Miles Davis. And on the Back on the Block album, Quincy Jones paired me with my idol, Chaka Khan.
Those are some exceptional pairings. I mean, that just shows what a musical genius he was to know who to pair with. And I love that you got paired with one of your mentors who inspired you. That's amazing.
Truly, truly. That's a great story, too.
It is a good story. You got some good stories.
When I sang the demo to The Places You Find Love for the Secret Garden album, and I sang the whole song, and then Quincy brought Chaka in when we were going to record it. And she listened to me sing the whole song, and then she looked at Quincy, and then she looked at me, and she said, "What the fuck you need me for? You got her." And I said, "Chaka, I told Quincy the same thing. What the fuck you need her for? You got me." It was hilarious.
I love that. Oh my goodness. Thanks for that. I needed that. I love that. And Siedah, we hear you're writing new songs for the Color Purple musical film. What are some of your other upcoming projects?
I'm currently working on The Pursuit of Happiness, the musical. Will Smith is the executive producing, and I'm very, very excited. I've been working on it for a few years now. We finally have a composer and the book writer. We're all together, and it's very cohesive right now. We've had some stops and starts, but we're back on the right track right now. We've got our crew together, and it's coming together very well. I'm working on also The Help, the musical. I'm very excited about all the theater projects that I'm working on, and I'm happy that I no longer have to deal with A&R guys from record companies. I don't know if I should say that, but anyway, they were always just busy trying to make me write what was already on the radio, and that was not my thing, so I didn't do well with them. And working with musical theater is a completely different experience. So I always had a problem with writing what was already on the radio, so I didn't do very well coming up with songs for new artists. So my husband sort of pushed me in the direction of writing for musical theater, and in that I have found such a warm and welcome embrace. I just love it. I love working with composers for specific scenes. The first of my 2 Oscar nominations was for Dreamgirls' Love You I Do. And my assignment on that film was there were things in the scene that Jennifer Hudson's character could not say to Jamie Foxx's character, but she wanted to. So she wrote a song that said what she wanted to say. And for me, my charge was for the song to be the third actor in the scene. It was about conveying a message through that music. And Quincy's like the best at that. He writes, he's able to put songs to film and television projects that sort of seamlessly involve the music with the characters. And when it's done right, which is how he does it, you don't discern, like the music doesn't jump out at you and distract you from the scene. He's very, very, very knowledgeable and very good at that.
Wow.
So I've been working on the theater thing, and also my husband/manager, found a contest through iHeartMedia where they were searching for the next great female podcaster. And they set up this podcast academy, and I was one of 10 chosen podcast segments out of 500. And my podcast is called The Uppity Knitter. And it's going to, it's a podcast about your favorite celebrities and their unusual hobbies. So it's insane. I got RuPaul, Cindy Blackman Santana, Patty Austin, Dawn Lewis, Michael T. Williamson, Marlon Wayans. It's just insane, and it drops in a couple of weeks. June 28th. See, my
I
husband's in the
love
background.
that.
June 28th, that drops. And I'm just so excited. I'm looking forward to interviewing Quincy. And I asked him. He said, "I don't have no damn hobbies, so I don't know what to do with that." So I don't know. So yeah.
Okay.
I'm very excited about the work I'm doing right now. I'm really happy that my music has a home, a place to be, as opposed to on the shelf of a A&R guy's desk or in his drawer, on his playlist, whatever. I have my songs have a purpose and a place and a home, and that's really what it's all about.
I love that.
And,
I love that.
Mr. Jones is really the best at marrying music and visuals, in my never to be humble opinion.
And then I have to ask both you and Keith, because based on your podcast, what are your unusual hobbies? We'll start with you, Siedah, what your unusual hobby is. And Keith, I need to know what yours is as well.
I am an avid knitter and crocheter, hence the title, The Uppity Knitter. And it was so weird. I used to live on the west side in Santa Monica, and when I was, I came back from tour, Michael Jackson's tour, and I went to the yarn store just to get some yarn and hold on. There were these women having a little knitting circle. And so I decided I was going to sit down and knit with these women. So the woman sitting next to me had some yarn in her lap and she was knitting. I said, "Oh, that's really pretty. What is that you're knitting with?" She said, "Oh, this is just cotton, nothing special." She said, What are you knitting with?" I said, "This is cashmere." She said, "Oh,
yeah, that's definitely uppity.
aren't you an uppity knitter?" I said, "What did you call me?" She said, "I said knitter. I said knitter."
And Keith, how about you? What is your unusual hobby?
I've been working too much. I need to develop some unusual hobbies, to tell you the truth,
Right.
That's what I need to do.
Well, hopefully you'll figure one out. And I just want to thank both of you for joining us today.
Wait a minute,
Yes.
Monique. What's your unusual hobby?
Mine isn't that unusual. I just love to cook. It relaxes me. I love chopping up vegetables. I love trying new seasonings. So it's not unusual, but I just love cooking. That is my jam.
That is unusual because you are not a chef.
Thank you.
Okay? You work in rape. That's unusual. You work in media.
Thank you.
So that's unusual.
I'm an uppity cooker. And before I let you guys leave out, what are your social media tags, contact information, website info? Let's start with you, Keith. What is yours?
I'll text it.
Okay. And then Siedah, how about for you?
Insta at SiedahGarrett.com or at Siedah Garrett, Siedah.com, and Siedah.com. Siedah,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, once again, thank you both for joining us, and happy birthday to the legendary, iconic Mr. Quincy Jones. And be sure to tune in. If you like what you saw, like it, subscribe, comment. We'll be sure to comment back to you all, and have a great day.
Music Day, a verified hit, real talk with experience. Executive producer, Jacqueline Reinhardt, Pat Shields, Ken Johnson, and Mark Hill. The associate producers are Tony Winger, Sheila Eldridge, and Shannon Henderson. Talent booking, Black Dot LLC. Production by Mark Hill Creative and Mean Old Lion Media. I'm your announcer, Jay Johnson. This has been a Living Legends Foundation, Inc. production. Find out more about the Living Legend Foundation, Inc. or donate to livinglegendsfoundation.com.